With the latest round of Byzantine civil wars ending in 1357, the Ottoman Beylik made military plans to push into the Balkans. Ottoman raids had already reached as deep into the Bulgarian Empire by 1355, but the Ottoman conquest of Gallipoli and other nearby towns had prompted a new permanent policy of immigration into Europe by the Ottoman government. The first Ottoman families had started to migrate into Europe, and permanent Ottoman garrisons were established in the region. By this time period, the Ottoman military was led by Orhan Gazi's eldest son, Süleyman Pasha. Being the most experienced son of Orhan Gazi, Süleyman Pasha had led numerous Ottoman armies during the last two Byzantine civil wars, and administered the Karasit annexation during the 1340s. Süleyman Pasha was expected to be the next Bey of the Ottomans after the death of his father. However, during a hunting expedition in Thrace, Süleyman Pasha would fall off his horse and die from his injuries. The shocking news of the death of his son led the 76-year-old Orhan Gazi into a state of major depression. On top of the sudden death, only weeks before, Orhan Gazi's youngest son, Theodore Katazena, Şehzade Halil, was captured by Genoese pirates. After lengthy negotiations between the Byzantines and Genoa, a deal was reached and Şehzade Halil was released back to the Ottomans. With the death of the heir to the Ottoman Beylik, Byzantine Emperor John V thought that if Şehzade Halil succeeded Orhan Gazi to the throne one day, that future relations between the Ottomans and the Byzantines would flourish due to the control Theodore Katazena had over Halil. John's dream of the Ottomans under the leadership of Şehzade Halil grew with each passing day. He thought that the ascension of the young boy to the Ottoman throne could potentially even convert the Ottomans to Christianity, thus preventing future Ottoman invasions into Europe. The Emperor of the Byzantines was fully focused on daily developments coming from the Ottoman court at Bursa. Orhan Gazi had three remaining sons, Şehzade Murad, Şehzade Ibrahim, and Şehzade Halil. After the death of Süleyman Pasha in 1359, Şehzade Murad was given command of all Ottoman forces in Europe to continue his late brother's conquests. Meanwhile, Şehzade Ibrahim was given the governorship of Eskişehir in Anatolia. By the end of 1359, Şehzade Murad had finished his preparations for the upcoming military campaign into Thrace, and thus the Ottoman army began its operations into the region. The Ottoman army would be led by three commanders for the upcoming military campaign: Lala Şahin Pasha, Hacı İlbey, and Gazi Enveros Bey, the latter two being former Karasit commanders. Şehzade Murad would assign Enveros Bey and his forces to the west in order to prevent Serbian reinforcements from entering the region, while he himself would take the bulk of the Ottoman army to the east. During the campaign, Murad would capture the towns of Çorlu, Lüleburgaz, Baba İskiye, and Kırklareli, reaching the Black Sea coast in the process. Also, during this time period, Enveros Bey himself would capture the fortress city of Demotika, while Murad was finalizing his march towards Adrianople. With the Ottomans overrunning Byzantine defenses in Thrace, a joint Byzantine-Bulgarian army from the west had decided to counterattack the Ottomans at Pınar. The pursuing battle of Pınar would be an Ottoman victory, which would see the coalition army retreat back to Adrianople after taking heavy losses against the Ottomans. After the battle, Murad consolidated all of his forces in the region and began the siege of Adrianople during the summer of 1361. The local Byzantine governor of Adrianople would flee the city during the siege, which would result in the city being surrendered to the Ottomans soon after. The Ottoman Beylik had just captured one of the largest cities in the Byzantine Empire. Soon after the fall of Adrianople, during the spring of 1362, at the age of 80, Orhan Gazi, son of Osman Gazi, died from natural causes. He would be buried in the Ottoman capital city of Bursa, the city that he had conquered 36 years ago. Shahzada Murat, learning of the death of his father, rode off to the capital city of Bursa to secure the Ottoman throne. Upon arriving in Bursa, Shahzada Murat was proclaimed Sultan by Ottoman statesmen and the religious ulama. Almost immediately after being crowned in Bursa, Sultan Murat I had started receiving military developments coming from Thrace. The Byzantines, with the help of the Bulgarians, had recaptured the cities of Çorlu, Luluburgaz, and Malkara. Also, reports of potential rebellions from Shahzada Ibrahim and Shahzada Halil had surfaced. To make things worse, the Ottoman garrison at Ankara was expelled by the local Ayas government after learning of the death of Orhan Gazi. The 36-year-old Murat I started out his reign by first marching on Ankara. In a short military campaign, the Ayas government was overthrown and the Ottomans formally annexed Ankara and its surrounding regions. On his way back to Bursa, Murat I would also stop at the cities of Eskişehir and Bilecik in order to imprison his brothers on the charges of treason. A hidden plot was discovered in which Byzantine Emperor John V had plotted to remove Murat I from his throne and install Shahzada Halil as a puppet ruler. A few days later, on the orders of Murat I, Shahzada Ibrahim and Halil were strangled via a silk rope, thus marking the event the first fratricide in Ottoman history. After stabilizing his Anatolian holdings, Murat I decided to once again march on Thrace. After another short military campaign recapturing the cities of Çorlu, Luluburgaz, and Malkara, Murat I and his military council decided to push deeper into Europe. After the Ottomans regrouped their forces at Demotika, a two-pronged attack into Europe was planned out by Murat I. Gazi Enver Bey would take his contingent of the army and head west, hugging the Aegean Sea, while Lale Şahin Pasha would take his forces up north towards the Rhodope mountain range and descend into Bulgaria. The Ottoman military offensive started out strong, with Enver Bey capturing the city of Komotini and Lale Şahin Pasha capturing Stara Zagora before besieging Plovdiv, one of the largest cities within the Bulgarian Empire. After a long siege in 1364, the city would fall to the forces of Lale Şahin Pasha, and now the city would serve as a major military base for the Ottomans in the region. As cities in Thrace fell like falling dominoes, Murat I ordered another mass migration of Muslim families from Anatolia to resettle in the newly conquered lands in Europe. After the Black Death, many cities in the Balkans were heavily depopulated due to the region being hit hard by the global pandemic. This made it easier for the Ottomans, who were lightly scarred by the pandemic, to conquer and settle in cities in Thrace during the 1360s. After the fall of Plovdiv, the Ottomans and the Byzantines negotiated terms of peace in which John V promised to not take part in any anti-Ottoman coalitions in the future, in return for the cessation of Ottoman raids into Byzantine lands. This peace would give Sultan Murat I time to consolidate his new conquests in Europe. Meanwhile, to the west, according to Ottoman chronicles, a Serbian army led by Serbian despot Vukašin Manjević and Hungarian king Louis I prepared for a future crusade against the Ottomans. The conquest of vast lands in the Balkans by the Ottomans during the 1360s had caught the attention of Christian Europe that seek to drive the Turks back to Anatolia. Back in 1355, Emperor Stefan Dušan IV of Serbia had died, leaving his newly constructed Serbian Empire in the hands of his son, Emperor Stefan Uros V. During the reign of Stefan Dušan IV, Serbia had gone through a golden age in which the arts, the military, and the economy all flourished. However, with the death of Dušan, the Serbian Empire entered a period of decline. Stefan Uros V lacked the skills to govern such a large empire, as he was often indecisive in his rulings and lacked a strong character to keep his Serbian nobility under his control. By 1364, the most powerful of the Serbian nobles, Vukašin Manjević, had considerable influence over the weak emperor and effectively ruled over him. The Crusader army marched its way into Ottoman territory in 1364 with the hopes of capturing Adrianople, which was by then slowly being transformed into a new Ottoman capital city. Hearing the news of an incoming Crusader invasion, Lale Şahin Pasha sent out letters to Murat I, who was in Bursa, to send military reinforcements to Thrace at once. During the meantime, Hacı İlbey had started scouting the Crusader army, which was encamped near a village a couple of miles north of Adrianople. According to Ottoman chronicles, the Crusader army had begun to feast at night, leaving their encampment unprotected. They didn't believe a major Ottoman army was in the region, since most of the Ottoman army was recalled to Anatolia months before by Murat I. With the Crusaders off guard, Hacı İlbey, with his 10,000 warriors, ambushed the Crusader camp in the middle of the night. The pursuing battle of Sırpsındığı would see the total destruction of the Crusader army. Despot Vukašin Manjević and Hungarian King Louis I would barely escape from the fray, as their Crusader host was disintegrated. The massive Ottoman victory during the battle would help ensure a permanent Ottoman presence in the Balkans for another decade. The battle would also mark the first time the Ottomans would fight against an invading Crusader army in their history. The Ottoman Beylik under Sultan Murat I was now firmly established in Europe.